So first of all, we need to pick a base plate. So I'm going to use this base plate just because it's about the same size as a Jeep, but it shouldn't matter too much. As long as you don't have like this as your base plate, that probably won't work very well, but I won't stop you. So the way we do steering and ball sockets for our wheels, it depends which way you physically build the thing, your car, facing. So right now, it's facing the correct way. Right now, it's facing the incorrect way. And the way you can tell that is by taking a paint tool and putting a smile on the ground. Can you see which way the smile is facing? That's the way we need to be building. So we have our base plate, we have to pick our wheels. So the wheels cannot be too small because these wheels will not be able to spin fast enough. They will run into the angular velocity limit, so your car won't be able to go very fast. So I'm going to use some medium-sized wheels, which won't have that problem. So we have our base plate and our wheels in position. Importantly, the wheels are all level, so the car will drive flat and even. The next step is using the Make Spherical tool to turn our wheels into a perfect sphere hitbox. So what Make Spherical does, if we get the material tool, I can demonstrate. The surface of this wheel is not perfectly round. There are, if you zoom in far enough, there are flat sections and edges. So, what Make Spherical does is turn it into a perfect sphere, so it can roll perfectly without catching on anything. So, our wheels need to be spherical. Well, they don't need to be, but it helps. If you want your car to go fast, yeah. So, we have our wheels, we have our base plate, now we need a seat and a pod controller. So we have everything here. Now we need our steering chip. So I have made a example steering chip that I'm going to use, which does pretty much exactly what you would need it to do and nothing more. So this E2 can go anywhere. I'm just going to place it here, but it's going to stay stationary while we drive around. So, once we have our setting E2, we must wire it up to our pod controller. So that's A wired to A, D wired to D, and then base wired to our base plate. So, our setting is set up. Now we can start attaching the wheels. So, for the rear wheels, it's pretty simple. We have a tool called Axis Center, which is all you need. So, force limit, torque limit, rotation friction, all 0. No collide, check, and the other 2 boxes, uncheck. And all you have to do is click on the outside side of the wheel, and then the outside side of the base plate. And it will say axis created. And now, if I look at its constraints, it has a axis between the base and the wheel at the wheel's center of mass. And we do that for both wheels, both rear wheels, I should say. For the front wheels, things are a little more complicated. Oh my glob. So, now for the front wheels, things are a little more complicated. So fortunately, we have 2 tools that makes this pretty easy. So first of all, ball socket center. Force limit, torque limit, and the XYZ friction should all be set to 0. X rotation minimum should be all the way down, minus 180. and X rotation maximum should be all the way up, positive 180. And that should be the case for X, Y, and Z rotation minimum and maximum. And then down here, we check no collide and uncheck the other things. So now that the tool is set up, we click anywhere on this front wheel and then anywhere on the base, and it will say ball socket created. We do that for both front wheels. So that will create a ball socket at the wheel's center of mass. We can copy and paste this real quick to demonstrate. So now the wheels are physically attached, and they can also rotate. The problem is they can rotate in any direction, which is not really what we want. So the way we fix this is we have to attach them to our steering E2 with a special constraint. Normally you would do this with a ball socket advanced and change the settings to be something specific. We have a tool called Easy Advanced Ball Socket, which will do it for us. So uncheck lock X axis, check lock Y, and check lock Z. This is where the direction you're building comes into play, because these settings are relative to the world. So if your car is facing like this way, you would use Y instead of X. So X unchecked, Y checked, Z checked. Free movement checked, no collide doesn't matter, draw XYZ doesn't matter. So now we click the front wheel anywhere and the setting steering anywhere, and we do that for both front wheels. So an important note is that the weight of things matters. So in this case, these wheels are only 10 by default, which is way too low. So I'm going to bump them all the way up to 75. So the wheels weigh 75, the base plate is going to weigh 250. Just for example. You can make it lighter or heavier, but that's what I'm going with. So now everything should be set up. So I'm just going to put a thruster on the back real quick to make sure we can drive. So we have our thruster, we have our wheels, we have everything. It's good to go. So now I'm just going to paste a copy outside and give it a test drive. So you can see our wheels steer when we press A or D. And everything rotates as it should. Behaves like a car. So if all you wanted to do was make a car with setting steering, well, that's where it ends. If you want to make it powered by ACF, then that's what we're going to get to. So our chassis is complete. Now we need to pick our ACF components. I'm going to use the regular smallest size V8 petrol because it has good torque, good power, well, enough torque and enough power for what we're doing. An important note is that bigger engines are not necessarily for faster cars, they are for heavier cars. Of course, more power will make you faster, but bigger engines weigh more. And weight is very important for... Power to weight ratio is very important for having a fast car. So we have our engine picked out. Now we need to connect the engine to the wheels. So for that, we're going to use the gearboxes section of the ACF menu. there's 3-speed, 6-speed, all these different kinds of gearboxes. There's CVTs. We're just going to use a differential. That is the most basic way to link power to a wheel. So we're going to get the differential small. We're going to set gear 1 all the way up. So gear 1 and final drive are both 1. And we're going to spawn our differential. So now we need to link the engine to the differential back here. So the way we do that is, as you can see, if I hold the ACF menu tool, you can see there's a power source right here. And then over here, there is a input. So we select, under entities, we select engines, gearbox, whatever. And then we right-click the engine. It will turn green. And then we right-click the gearbox back here, and that will create a link between it. So now if I mouse over one of them, you can see there's a white line connecting them. So now the same thing, these have a right output and a left output, which, I mean, yeah, I guess that's the way it is. So we right-click this differential, and then we right-click the wheel, and now if we look at this again, you can see that the wheel is powered. So we do that for both wheels. So now the car has its rear wheels connected to the engine, but we don't want to connect just the rear wheels. We want to connect all of our wheels. So we will get another differential for the front, but this time gear 1 is going to be -1 because this one is for the front wheels and it has to go in reverse. So we have our front differential in place. Now we need to get power from here to the front and the back. And the way we're going to do that is there is inline differential small. And we're going to set the gear to 1, final drive to 1, and that looks like this. So this has a power input up here, and then a power output on this side and this side. So now we have a differential in the middle, a differential in the front, and in the back. So now we just need to hook it all up. So first of all, I'm going to disconnect the engine from... That's not how you do that. How do you do that? R. So we're going to so I disconnected the engine from the rear wheels, or from the rear differential. Now we're going to connect the engine to this one. So now from here we can connect the power to the front and to the back, and then we can connect this to the front wheels. So now if we mouse over this, you can see this engine is our power source. It goes into this differential, which splits the power evenly, and then this differential splits it again between each wheel, and so does this one. So now all wheels are connected to power. Depending on the server you play on, ACF engines may or may not require fuel to run. On this server, they do require fuel, so I'm going to attach a fuel tank. So all our ACF components are in place. They're all connected together. Now everything needs to be wired up. So I have a steering E2 that I made that has some ACF control built in. So I'm just going to update this and rewire it. So with this car drive E2, this can control all of the ACF stuff for me. So I will wire active from the engine to engine on throttle from the engine to engine throttle. For this differential in the middle, the gearbox in the middle, we are going to wire clutch to gearbox clutch and gear to gearbox gear. Now on these, the things that connect to the wheels, these two differentials, we are going to wire brake to differential brake. So basically this steering E2 I made just has some ACF control built in. You can do this just with gates or anything else. I'm just, for simplicity, I'm using one E2 to control the whole car. So that's all wired up. Fuel, we need to wire active from fuel to fuel on fuel. And what that will do is make it so that the fuel tank is active whenever it has fuel. And also, I think I forgot to link. Yes, link your fuel to your engine. So I'm also going to connect the rear wheels to the base with some weld latches and wire these to handbrake. And what this will do is just weld the wheels to the base when we press the handbrake. So now it's time to take it for a test drive. So if we get in the car here and hold W, you can see that it's not really going anywhere. And the reason for that is that our gear ratios in our gearbox our ratio is too big, pretty much. Our final drive in here needs to be smaller. So I'm going to take the differential from before, and instead of final drive being 1, I'm going to set it all the way down to 0.1. So now this gear is going to be 1/10 of the size, basically. And what that means is that when I press W, we can actually accelerate. So now we have a driving ACF-powered car. So the problem with this is that it has no reverse. And the way we fix that is, instead of using a differential here with 1 gear, we are going to use a transfer case with 2 gears. So gear 1 is going to be our forward gear. Gear 2 is going to be our reverse gear. And then our final drive is going to be 0.1 like we set before. And I will just... Oops, that's the wrong size. There we go. So now, if I press W, we go forward. If I hold S, we go backwards. So what this control E2 does is, when you're holding S, it switches to gear 2. When you're holding W, it's in gear 1. So this control E2 will work with anything that has a drive gear and a reverse gear. So manual transmissions, it will not work with. So now we can drive, and we can brake, and we can reverse. So now the thing with gears is we can get our top speed higher than this, right? The engine is at its max RPM right now. It can't go any faster. So the way that we make the car go faster is we shift into a different gear. So at this point, you have a choice. Do you want to use manual or automatic transmissions? If you use manual, all you have to do is wire up and gear down to, like, say, left and right click. And then you use left and right click to shift up or down through your gears. I'm going to use a automatic gearbox. So I'm going to use a 3-speed auto. So we have 3 forward gears and 1 reverse gear. So there's a calculator to adjust the settings for you, but we're not going to use that. So final drive, let's start with just 1. Reverse gear minus 0.1, gear 3, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1, and then we need to set the upshift speeds. So I'm going to use MPH because that's what I'm familiar with. And I'm going to set it so that when we get to 20 miles per hour, we will shift up from gear 1 into gear 2, which is a larger ratio. So it will let us go faster. And then 40 and 60. So now let's update this. There we go. We have an automatic transmission. Upshift at 20, upshift at 40, upshift to 60. Yeah. Okay, so now let's take it for a test drive. So now we have 3 gears. So if we accelerate, you can hear the transmission is shifting. So we have 3 gears, but the engine doesn't sound very happy, does he? If your engine sounds like that, it's probably your final drive. So I'm going to adjust my final drive down to 0.5 and try again. There we go. Now we have 3 forward gears. We can get up to higher speeds. So if you wanted, you could use 5 gears, you could use 8 gears. So that is our car complete.